The rain came down like bullets from heaven, cold and merciless, turning the dusty streets of Julesburg, Colorado into rivers of mud as Rebecca Bancroft ran for her life through the storm of 1878. Her dress clung to her body, heavy with water, and her dark hair had long since escaped its pins, streaming behind her like a banner of desperation. Thunder rolled across the plains, shaking the very earth beneath her feet, and lightning split the sky with brilliant white fire that illuminated the ramshackle buildings of the frontier town for brief, terrifying moments. She could hear them behind her, their voices carrying on the wind, shouting her name with a fury that made her blood run cold. Her cousins had finally found her, and they were not the forgiving type. Marcus and Daniel Bancroft had tracked her all the way from Kansas, where she had fled 3 weeks ago after discovering what they had planned for her. An arranged marriage to a man twice her age, a cattle baron with a reputation for cruelty and a string of dead wives, whose demise had always been explained away as accidents or weak constitutions. Rebecca had known that if she stayed, if she went through with the wedding her cousins had arranged in exchange for land and money, she would become just another unfortunate woman who had not survived the harsh life of the frontier. So she had taken what little she could carry and disappeared into the night, heading west toward the promise of freedom and a chance to make her own way in the world. But freedom was proving harder to find than she had imagined. Her cousins had connections, and they had followed her trail with the determination of men who had too much to lose if she escaped. The marriage contract had already been signed, money had already changed hands, and her defiance had made them look like fools. They would drag her back to Kansas in chains if they had to, and she knew that whatever punishment they had planned for her would be severe. Rebecca stumbled as her foot caught on something in the dark, nearly falling face first into the mud. She caught herself against the side of a building, her hands scraping against rough wood, and forced herself to keep moving. The storm was both her enemy and her ally, making it harder to see and run but also harder for her cousins to track her. She had no plan beyond running, no destination beyond a way. And as the rain continued to pour down and the thunder rolled overhead, she began to wonder if she would simply collapse in the street and let them take her. Then she saw it, a flash of movement ahead, a figure on horseback emerging from between two buildings. Lightning lit up the scene, and she saw him clearly for just a moment, a cowboy on a dark horse, his hat pulled low against the rain, his duster coat flapping in the wind. She did not know if he was friend or foe, but she was out of options and out of time. She could hear her cousins getting closer, their boots splashing through the mud, their angry voices cutting through the storm. Rebecca made a decision born of pure desperation. She ran straight toward the cowboy, waving her arms, hoping he would see her and not simply ride past. The horse reared slightly as she approached, startled by her sudden appearance, but the rider controlled the animal with practiced ease. She could not see his face in the darkness, but she could feel his gaze on her, assessing, calculating. "Please," she gasped, reaching up toward him. "Please help me. They're going to take me back. I cannot go back." The cowboy did not answer immediately. He looked past her, and she knew he had spotted her cousins emerging from the shadows. Then, with a movement so quick she barely registered it, he leaned down and offered her his arm. She grabbed it with both hands, and he hauled her up onto the horse in front of him with surprising strength. His arm came around her waist, holding her secure, and she felt the solid warmth of his body against her back, sheltering her from the storm. "Hold on," he said, his voice low and steady. And then the horse was moving, galloping through the mud and rain with powerful strides that carried them away from her cousins and toward the edge of town. She heard shouting behind them, heard someone yell for them to stop, but the cowboy did not slow down. He guided the horse with confidence through the storm, seeming to know exactly where he was going even though visibility was nearly zero. Rebecca held onto the saddle horn with white-knuckled hands, feeling the rain sting her face and the cold seep into her bones, but also feeling something else, something unexpected. Hope. They rode for what felt like hours, but was probably only 20 minutes, leaving the town behind and heading out onto the open prairie. The storm continued to rage around them, but gradually Rebecca realized they were approaching some kind of structure. As they got closer, lightning revealed a small ranch house with a barn and several outbuildings, all constructed of sturdy timber that looked like it could withstand anything the Colorado weather could throw at it. The cowboy brought the horse to a stop under the shelter of the barn's overhang and dismounted in one smooth motion. Then he reached up and helped Rebecca down, his hands strong and sure on her waist. She stumbled as her feet hit the ground, her legs shaky from fear and exhaustion, but he steadied her with a gentle grip. "You can stop running now," he said, and even though she could barely see his face in the darkness, she heard the kindness in his voice, the sincerity of the offer. Rebecca felt something break inside her, all the fear and tension and desperate hope of the past 3 weeks suddenly overwhelming her defenses. She sagged against him, and to her mortification, she began to cry. Not delicate tears, but great heaving sobs that shook her entire body. The cowboy did not pull away or seem uncomfortable with her display of emotion. Instead, he simply held her, one hand coming up to rest on the back of her head, letting her cry against his chest until the worst of it had passed. "Come on," he said finally, his voice still gentle. "Let us get you inside and dried off before you catch your death." He led her through the rain to the house, keeping one hand on her elbow to steady her, and opened the door to reveal a simple but well-maintained interior. There was a fireplace with embers still glowing, a wooden table with 2 chairs, a small kitchen area, and a doorway that presumably led to a bedroom. Everything was neat and organized, the home of a man who took care of what was his. The cowboy moved to the fireplace and began building up the fire, adding logs until flames began to lick upward, casting dancing light across the room. Rebecca stood dripping on the wooden floor, shivering now that the adrenaline was fading and the cold was setting in. She wrapped her arms around herself, watching him work, trying to understand what had just happened and why this stranger had helped her. "There is a trunk in the bedroom with some clothes that might fit you," he said, not looking at her as he poked at the fire. "They belong to my sister. She left them here when she went east to get married. You should get out of those wet things before you freeze." "Thank you," Rebecca managed through chattering teeth. "I do not know how to repay you for your kindness." Now he did look at her, and in the firelight she finally got a good look at his face. He was younger than she had expected, probably close to her own age of 22, with strong features, dark eyes, and a jaw that looked like it had been carved from granite. He was handsome in a rugged, weathered way that spoke of years spent under the sun and wind of the frontier. "No repayment necessary," he said. "Go on now. Get changed. Then you can tell me why you were running through a storm like the devil himself was chasing you." Rebecca nodded and made her way to the bedroom on unsteady legs. The trunk was easy to find, sitting at the foot of a simple but well-made bed. Inside she found several dresses, a nightgown, and various undergarments, all carefully folded and preserved. She selected a simple blue calico dress that looked like it would fit and changed out of her soaked clothing with trembling fingers. The dry fabric felt like heaven against her cold skin, and she took a moment to wring out her hair as best she could before returning to the main room. The cowboy had put a kettle on to boil and was setting out 2 tin cups on the table. He glanced up as she entered, and something flickered in his eyes, there and gone so quickly she almost missed it. Appreciation, perhaps, or simple acknowledgement that she looked more human now that she was not dripping and bedraggled. "Sit," he said, gesturing to one of the chairs. "Coffee will be ready in a minute." Rebecca sat, grateful to be off her feet. Now that the immediate danger had passed, exhaustion was setting in hard. She had been running on fear and desperation for so long that she barely remembered what it felt like to simply sit in safety. The cowboy joined her at the table, studying her with those dark eyes. "My name is Vincent Irving," he said. "This is my ranch, such as it is. Been working this land for 3 years now, trying to build something worth keeping." "Rebecca Bancroft," she replied, and saw recognition flicker across his face. "Yes, those Bancrofts. The ones who were shouting at you to stop." "Your family?" Vincent asked. "My cousins," Rebecca said, and the word tasted bitter on her tongue. "They want to drag me back to Kansas and force me into a marriage I never agreed to. A marriage to a man who has already buried 3 wives under suspicious circumstances. They sold me like I was cattle, like I was property to be traded for land and money." Vincent's jaw tightened, and she saw anger flash in his eyes, but it was not directed at her. "That is no way to treat family," he said quietly. "That is no way to treat anyone." The kettle began to whistle, and he got up to pour the coffee, strong and black and bitter. Rebecca wrapped her hands around the warm cup and felt some of the cold finally beginning to leave her bones. "They will come looking for me," she said. "When the storm clears, they will track us here. I have put you in danger just by accepting your help." Vincent took a sip of his coffee and shrugged. "This is my land. They have no authority here, and I do not take kindly to men who think they can force a woman into something against her will. You are welcome to stay as long as you need to figure out what comes next." Rebecca felt tears prick at her eyes again, but she blinked them back. "Why would you do this for a stranger? You do not know me. You do not know if I am telling the truth." "I know fear when I see it," Vincent said simply. "And I know desperation. No woman runs through a storm like that unless she has a damn good reason. I choose to believe you are telling the truth, and if it turns out you are not, well, I will deal with that when it comes." They sat in silence for a while, drinking their coffee and listening to the storm rage outside. The fire crackled and popped, casting warm light across the simple room, and Rebecca felt something she had not felt in a very long time. Safety. It was fragile and possibly temporary, but it was real, and it was enough for now. "Tell me about this ranch," she said finally, wanting to think about something other than her cousins and the danger she had brought to Vincent's door. He seemed grateful for the change of subject. "It is not much yet," he admitted. "Got about 200 acres, a decent herd of cattle, couple of horses. I came out here from Virginia after the war, looking for a fresh start. My father had been a farmer, but the war destroyed everything we had. Figured I would try my hand at ranching, make a life for myself out here where the past does not matter as much as what you can build for the future." There was something in his voice, a hint of old pain carefully buried, that told Rebecca there was more to his story than he was saying. But she understood the need to keep some things private, to protect the wounds that had not fully healed. "It sounds like a good dream," she said, "building something of your own, making your own way." "That is all any of us can do," Vincent said. "Make the best of what we have, and try to leave the world a little better than we found it." The storm continued through the night, and eventually Vincent insisted that Rebecca take the bed while he would sleep on a bedroll by the fire. She protested, knowing it was his home and his bed, but he would not hear of it. So she retreated to the bedroom and climbed under the quilts, her body aching and her mind spinning with everything that had happened. She woke to pale sunlight streaming through the window and the smell of bacon frying. For a moment she was disoriented, not remembering where she was, but then the events of the previous night came flooding back. She got up quickly and made the bed with practiced efficiency before joining Vincent in the main room. He was cooking breakfast at the small stove, and he glanced over his shoulder as she entered. "Morning," he said. "Hope you are hungry. We have a lot to discuss." They ate in comfortable silence, and Rebecca found herself studying him in the clear light of day. He moved with an easy confidence, economical in his motions, nothing wasted. His hands were scarred and calloused from hard work, but they were gentle when he handed her a plate. There was something solid about him, something dependable, and Rebecca found herself trusting him in a way she had not trusted anyone in a very long time. After breakfast, Vincent pushed back from the table and regarded her seriously. "Your cousins will likely be looking for you today. The storm will have slowed them down, but men like that do not give up easy, especially when there is money involved. We need to figure out what you want to do. You can stay here, and I will help you defend your right to make your own choices. Or I can help you move on, get you to Denver or somewhere farther west where they might not find you. Either way, I am with you in this." Rebecca felt her throat tighten with emotion. "Why?" she asked again. "Why would you risk so much for someone you just met?" Vincent was quiet for a long moment, his dark eyes thoughtful. "Because someone did the same for me once," he said finally. "After the war, I was in a bad way. Lost, angry, not sure I wanted to keep going. A stranger helped me when he had no reason to, gave me a job and a purpose when I needed it most. He told me that kindness is not about what you get back. It is about what you pass forward. So I am passing it forward to you." Rebecca felt something shift in her chest, a warmth spreading through her that had nothing to do with the fire or the coffee. She looked at this cowboy who had appeared out of a storm like something from a dream, and she made a decision. "I want to stay," she said. "I am tired of running. I want to make a stand, to finally take control of my own life. And if my cousins come, then we will face them together." Vincent nodded, a small smile tugging at the corner of his mouth. "All right then, we will need to be prepared. I have some friends in town who can help, men who respect the law and a person's right to choose their own path. Let me ride into Julesburg and talk to the marshal. He is a good man, fair, and he does not take kindly to anyone trying to force someone into something against their will." "I should come with you," Rebecca said. "Better if you stay here for now," Vincent replied. "Give your cousins less opportunity to corner you in public. I will be back before noon." He was as good as his word. Rebecca spent the morning tidying the house, needing something to do with her nervous energy. She washed the breakfast dishes, swept the floor, and even started preparing ingredients for a stew for dinner. It felt strange and wonderful to have such domestic tasks, to be doing things because she wanted to rather than because someone was ordering her to. Vincent returned just as the sun reached its zenith, accompanied by a stocky man with a silver star pinned to his vest. The marshal had kind eyes and a no-nonsense demeanor that immediately put Rebecca at ease. "Miss Bancroft," he said, removing his hat as he entered the house. "Name is Marshal Tom Hewitt. Vincent here has told me about your situation. I want you to know that you are under the protection of the law. Nobody is going to force you into anything you do not want to do, not while I have anything to say about it." Relief flooded through Rebecca, so strong it made her knees weak. "Thank you, Marshal. My cousins, they have money and connections. I was afraid no one would believe me or care what happened to me." "I do not care how much money they have," Marshal Hewitt said firmly. "This is Colorado, not Kansas, and out here we do things according to the law. If your cousins try to take you by force, they will find themselves in a jail cell faster than they can spit. Now, Vincent tells me there is some question about an arranged marriage." Rebecca explained the situation in detail, telling the marshal about the cattle baron in Kansas, about how her cousins had arranged the marriage after her parents died, leaving her in their care. She told him about the dead wives, about her suspicions and her fear, about fleeing in the night with nothing but the clothes on her back and a few coins in her pocket. Marshal Hewitt listened intently, his expression growing darker as she spoke. When she finished, he let out a long breath. "Miss Bancroft, I am going to be straight with you. Your cousins can try to claim you are under their guardianship, that they have the right to make decisions for you. But you are a grown woman, and unless they have legal documentation proving you are incapable of making your own decisions, they have no legal grounds to force you to do anything. If they show up here causing trouble, I will arrest them for disturbing the peace at minimum. And if they try to take you by force, well, that is kidnapping, and the penalty for that is prison time." "What if they try to claim I stole from them or something similar?" Rebecca asked. "Could they not have me arrested on false charges?" "They could try," the marshal admitted. "But Vincent here is willing to vouch for your character, and that counts for something in this town. He is a respected man, works hard, pays his debts, does not cause trouble. If he says you are telling the truth, people will listen." Rebecca looked at Vincent, who met her gaze steadily. "I meant what I said," he told her. "You are not alone in this." The marshal stayed for another hour, going over the legal details and making sure Rebecca understood her rights. When he finally left, Rebecca felt like a weight had been lifted from her shoulders. It was not over, but for the first time since fleeing Kansas, she felt like she had a chance. The days that followed fell into a rhythm that surprised Rebecca with its simplicity and peace. She helped Vincent with the ranch work, learning how to care for the cattle, how to mend fences, how to do the 100 small tasks that kept a ranch running. He was a patient teacher, never condescending or impatient when she made mistakes, always willing to show her again until she got it right. In the evenings they would sit by the fire, talking about their lives, their dreams, their fears. Rebecca learned that Vincent had lost his entire family in the war, that he had fought for the Confederacy because his state had seceded, not because he believed in the cause. He told her about the guilt he carried, about the things he had seen and done, about trying to build something good out of the ashes of destruction. She told him about her childhood, about parents who had loved her but died too soon, about cousins who had seen her as nothing more than a commodity to be traded. She told him about her dreams of independence, of having her own life, of maybe one day opening a school or a shop, something that was hers. As the days turned into weeks, Rebecca began to realize that something was changing between them. The way Vincent looked at her had shifted, warmth and affection replacing the simple kindness of those first days. The accidental touches as they worked side by side began to linger a little longer. The conversations grew deeper, more personal, charged with an awareness that neither of them was quite ready to name. It was a month after that stormy night when her cousins finally showed up. Rebecca was hanging laundry on the line behind the house when she heard the sound of horses approaching. Her heart leaped into her throat and she dropped the shirt she was holding, already moving toward the house. Vincent was there in an instant, emerging from the barn with a rifle in his hands. His face was set in hard lines, but his voice was calm when he spoke. "Go inside. Stay away from the windows." Rebecca wanted to argue, wanted to face her cousins and tell them exactly what she thought of them, but she saw the wisdom in his words. She went inside but positioned herself where she could see through a crack in the door. Marcus and Daniel Bancroft rode up to the house with the confidence of men who were used to getting their way. They were both in their 30s, well-dressed and well-fed, with the look of men who had never done a day of hard labor in their lives. Marcus, the older of the two, dismounted and approached Vincent with a smile that did not reach his eyes. "Good day, friend," Marcus said, his voice smooth and practiced. "We are looking for our cousin, Rebecca Bancroft. We have reason to believe she might have sought shelter here during the storm last month. Have you seen her?" Vincent did not lower the rifle. "I know who you are and why you are here. Miss Bancroft is under my protection and the protection of Marshal Hewitt. She has made it clear she does not want anything to do with you or your plans for her." Daniel dismounted as well, his face flushing with anger. "Now you listen here. Rebecca is our responsibility, our kin. We have every right to take her back where she belongs." "She is a grown woman with the right to make her own choices," Vincent said, his voice hard as iron. "And she has chosen not to go with you. I suggest you respect that choice and ride on out of here." "This is none of your concern," Marcus said, his pleasant facade slipping. "This is a family matter. She made it my concern when I gave her my word I would protect her," Vincent replied. "Now you have two choices. You can ride back to Julesburg and leave Miss Bancroft alone, or you can try something foolish and answer to the marshal for it. Your choice." Marcus's eyes narrowed, and Rebecca could see him calculating, weighing his options. She held her breath, waiting to see what he would do. For a long moment, nothing happened, the three men standing in a tense tableau under the bright Colorado sun. Then Marshal Hewitt rode up with two deputies, and the tension broke. "Afternoon, gentlemen," the marshal said pleasantly, though his hand rested on the gun at his hip. "Heard you were asking around town about Miss Bancroft. Thought I would ride out and make sure everyone understands the situation." Marcus turned to face the marshal, and Rebecca could see the frustration on his face. "Marshal, this is a family matter. Our cousin is young and impressionable. She has been led astray by false ideas about independence. We only want what is best for her." "What is best for her is what she decides is best for her," Marshal Hewitt said flatly. "Miss Bancroft has made her wishes clear. She does not want to return to Kansas, and she does not want to marry the man you selected for her. That is her right under the law, and I will enforce that right." "There was a contract," Daniel sputtered. "Money changed hands. We have obligations." "Then you should have thought of that before arranging a marriage without the consent of the woman involved," the marshal said. "Whatever financial difficulties you have brought on yourselves are not Miss Bancroft's problem. Now, I am going to give you the same advice Vincent here just gave you. Ride on out of here and do not come back. If I see you on this property again, or if I hear you have been bothering Miss Bancroft in town, I will arrest you for harassment. Do I make myself clear?" Marcus opened his mouth to argue, but Daniel grabbed his arm. "Let it go," he said quietly. "We cannot win this fight, not here." Rebecca watched as her cousins mounted their horses and rode away, their backs stiff with anger and wounded pride. She did not feel triumph exactly, but she did feel a profound sense of relief. It was finally over. They had tried to take her back and failed, and now there was nothing left for them to do but return to Kansas and face the consequences of their actions. Vincent lowered the rifle and turned to the marshal. "Thank you for the backup." "That is what we are here for," Marshal Hewitt said with a smile. "Miss Bancroft, you can come out now. They are gone." Rebecca stepped out onto the porch, her legs a little shaky but her head held high. "Thank you, Marshal. I owe you a great debt." "No debt," the marshal said, "just doing my job. Though I will say, you have found yourself a good man in Vincent Irving. Not everyone would have taken the risk he did." After the marshal and his deputies left, Rebecca and Vincent stood together in the yard, watching the dust settle. She felt like she should say something, should express the gratitude and relief and a dozen other emotions swirling inside her, but words seemed inadequate. "It is really over," she said finally, her voice barely above a whisper. "It is really over," Vincent confirmed. He set the rifle down and turned to face her, and there was something in his eyes that made her breath catch. "Rebecca, we need to talk." Her heart began to pound for an entirely different reason. "About what about us?" he said simply. "About what happens next. You are free now, free to make your own choices, to go wherever you want, to do whatever you want. And I need to know what you want because I cannot keep pretending that I do not care about you, that this past month has not meant something to me." Rebecca felt heat rise to her cheeks, but she did not look away. "What has it meant to you?" Vincent took a step closer, and she could see the vulnerability in his face, the fear of rejection warring with hope. "It has meant everything," he said quietly. "You walked into my life in the middle of a storm, and you brought light with you. These past weeks, working with you, talking with you, learning who you are, it has been the happiest I have been in years. I know I have no right to ask this. I know you need time to figure out what you want for your own life, but I have to tell you how I feel. I am falling in love with you, Rebecca Bancroft, and I want you to stay, not because you are hiding or because you need protection, but because you want to be here, because you want to build a life with me." Tears sprang to Rebecca's eyes, but they were good tears, tears of joy and relief and overwhelming emotion. "Vincent," she said, reaching up to cup his face with her hand, "you are not falling in love with me. I think you are already there, just like I am already there. I love you. I think I started loving you that first night when you told me I could stop running. You gave me safety and kindness and respect when I had nothing, and every day since then, you have shown me what it means to be truly cared for. I do not want to leave. I want to stay here with you, build this ranch with you, build a life with you." Vincent let out a breath that sounded like a prayer and pulled her into his arms, holding her close. Rebecca wrapped her arms around his neck and held on tight, feeling his heart beating against hers, strong and steady and sure. When he finally pulled back enough to look at her, his eyes were bright with emotion. "I want to do this right," he said. "I want to court you properly, let people know my intentions are honorable. I want to marry you if you will have me, but I want you to be sure, to have time to know your own mind without pressure or fear." "I am sure," Rebecca said, smiling through her tears. "But I appreciate that you want to do things properly. So yes, Vincent Irving, you may court me. And I suspect that in a few months, when people can see that I am not just choosing you because I have no other options, I will say yes when you ask me to be your wife." He grinned, a smile that transformed his serious face into something almost boyish, and then he was kissing her, gentle and tender and full of promise. Rebecca kissed him back, pouring all her love and hope and trust into that kiss, knowing she was finally, truly home. The next 6 months were a blur of happiness that Rebecca had never imagined possible. Vincent courted her with the kind of determined focus he brought to everything in his life. He took her on picnics in the high country, where wildflowers carpeted the meadows and the air was so clear it hurt to breathe. He taught her to ride properly, giving her a gentle mare named Daisy who became her constant companion. He introduced her to his friends in Julesburg, making it clear that she was important to him, and that anyone who wanted his friendship needed to respect her. Rebecca threw herself into learning everything she could about ranching, determined to be a true partner rather than a burden. She learned to tend the cattle, to help with the spring branding, to keep the books and manage the finances. Vincent was impressed by her quick mind and her willingness to work hard, and he began to rely on her judgment in ways that made her feel valued and necessary. They spent their evenings planning the future, talking about how they would expand the ranch, what they would build, what kind of life they wanted to create. Rebecca shared her dream of eventually opening a school in Julesburg, of helping other women and children get the education they deserved. Vincent supported her completely, promising that once the ranch was more established and profitable, they would make it happen. The people of Julesburg gradually accepted Rebecca as one of their own. She helped at church socials, volunteered to teach some of the local children to read, and proved herself to be hardworking and kind. The whispers about the woman who had run away from her family faded, replaced by respect for the woman who had made a new life for herself through courage and determination. In the fall, as the aspen trees turned gold and the air grew crisp with the promise of winter, Vincent proposed properly. He took Rebecca up into the mountains to a place where they could see for miles in every direction. The vast expanse of Colorado spread out before them in all its wild beauty. He got down on one knee and offered her a simple gold ring that had belonged to his grandmother, one of the few family heirlooms he had managed to save from the war. "Rebecca Bancroft," he said, his voice rough with emotion, "you are the strongest, bravest, most incredible woman I have ever known. You have made me happier than I ever thought possible, and I want to spend the rest of my life making you just as happy. Will you marry me?" "Yes," Rebecca said, pulling him to his feet and into her arms. "Yes, 1,000 times yes." They were married in November in the small church in Julesburg, with Marshall Hewitt standing up as Vincent's best man and the schoolteacher's wife, Martha, serving as Rebecca's matron of honor. It was a simple ceremony, but it was perfect, full of love and joy and the promise of a future built together. The first years of their marriage were hard work but deeply satisfying. They expanded the ranch, buying more land and building a larger herd. Rebecca proved to have a gift for business, negotiating favorable deals with buyers and managing their money with careful precision. Vincent continued to be the steady, dependable presence she had fallen in love with, supporting her dreams while pursuing his own. In the summer of 1880, Rebecca discovered she was pregnant. Vincent was overjoyed, treating her like spun glass despite her protests that she was perfectly capable of continuing to work. In March of 1881, she gave birth to a healthy baby boy they named Thomas Vincent Irving, after Marshall Hewitt, who had helped them when they needed it most, and Vincent's father. Being a mother changed Rebecca in ways she had not expected. She loved her son with a fierce intensity that sometimes frightened her, and she was determined to give him the kind of childhood she had wished for herself, full of love and security, and the freedom to be whoever he wanted to be. Vincent was a devoted father, spending hours with Thomas, teaching him about the ranch and the land, instilling in him the values of hard work and integrity. 2 years later, they had a daughter, Elizabeth Rose, who had her father's dark eyes and her mother's determination. Vincent doted on his daughter, and Rebecca found herself watching the two of them together with tears in her eyes, grateful beyond measure for the family they had created. As the years passed, the ranch continued to grow and prosper. Vincent's hard work and Rebecca's business acumen made them one of the most successful ranching families in the area. They built a larger house to accommodate their growing family, with a real parlor and multiple bedrooms, and even a small library where Rebecca kept her growing collection of books. In 1885, Rebecca finally opened her school. It was a small building on the edge of Julesburg, built with money she and Vincent had saved specifically for that purpose. She taught reading, writing, arithmetic, and history to anyone who wanted to learn, regardless of their age or background. The school became a point of pride for the town, and Rebecca found immense satisfaction in watching her students grow and learn and discover their own potential. Vincent supported her completely, taking on more of the ranch work so she could focus on teaching. They hired a foreman to help manage the day-to-day operations, a young man named Charlie, who proved to be trustworthy and hardworking. This allowed Vincent more time to spend with his children, teaching them to ride and work the land, passing on the knowledge and skills they would need to run the ranch someday if they chose to. Life was not without its challenges. There were harsh winters and dry summers, cattle lost to disease or predators, injuries and setbacks that tested their resolve. But through it all, Rebecca and Vincent faced everything together, their love and partnership growing stronger with each challenge overcome. In 1887, Rebecca received a letter from Kansas. Her cousin Marcus had died, and his lawyer was writing to inform her that she had been left a small inheritance from her parents' estate, money that Marcus had been holding in trust. It was not a fortune, but it was a significant sum, and it came with an apology written by Marcus before his death, admitting that he and Daniel had been wrong to try to force her into marriage, acknowledging the pain they had caused. Rebecca read the letter aloud to Vincent, her voice steady despite the complicated emotions swirling inside her. When she finished, she folded it carefully and set it aside. "You want to respond?" Vincent asked gently. "Right back to the lawyer." "I will acknowledge receipt of the inheritance," Rebecca said. "But as for forgiveness, I am not sure I can offer that. What they tried to do to me was wrong, and while I am glad Marcus came to see that before he died, it does not change the past. But I also will not let old anger poison the beautiful life we have built. I will take the money, use it to expand the school perhaps, and let that be the end of it." Vincent nodded, pulling her into his arms. "You are a wise woman, Rebecca Irving." "I am a woman who knows what matters," she corrected, resting her head against his chest. "And what matters is you and our children and the life we are building together. Everything else is just noise." The years continued to pass, bringing more joy than sorrow. Thomas grew into a tall, serious young man who loved the ranch and showed every sign of being as good a rancher as his father. Elizabeth was bright and curious, with her mother's love of learning and a determination that suggested she might follow in Rebecca's footsteps as a teacher. In 1890, Rebecca gave birth to their third and final child, another son they named James. He was a surprise, born when Rebecca was 34 and had thought her childbearing years were behind her, but he was welcomed with as much love as his siblings had been. As the 19th century drew to a close, Rebecca and Vincent found themselves looking back on nearly 2 decades of marriage with deep satisfaction. They had built something real and lasting, not just the ranch and the school, but a family, a community, a legacy that would outlive them. On a warm summer evening in 1897, they sat together on the porch of their house, watching the sun set over the mountains. Thomas was working in the barn, Elizabeth was inside helping with dinner, and young James was playing in the yard with a wooden horse Vincent had carved for him. "Do you ever think about that night?" Vincent asked, reaching over to take Rebecca's hand. "The night you came running through the storm." "All the time," Rebecca admitted. "Sometimes I still cannot believe how everything turned out. I was so scared, so certain that my life was over, that I would never have a choice or a chance. And then you appeared out of nowhere and gave me both." "You gave me something too," Vincent said quietly. "Purpose, love, a reason to build something bigger than myself. Before you, I was just existing, going through the motions, trying to atone for a past I could not change. You showed me that the future was worth more than the past, that I could create something good and meaningful." Rebecca squeezed his hand, feeling the familiar calluses, the strength in his fingers. We created it together, she said. Everything we have, everything we are, we built it together. Vincent raised her hand to his lips and kissed it gently. And I would do it all again in a heartbeat. They sat in comfortable silence, watching their children, watching the land they had worked so hard to nurture and protect. The ranch stretched out around them, cattle grazing peacefully in the fading light, the mountains standing eternal guard in the distance. In 1900, as the new century dawned, Rebecca stood with her family on the porch of their home and felt a profound sense of gratitude. She was 44 years old now, her dark hair threaded with silver laugh lines creasing the corners of her eyes. Vincent stood beside her, his hand in hers as it had been for over 20 years, his hair graying at the temples but his shoulders still strong and straight. Thomas, at 19, was running more and more of the ranch operations, proving himself to be a natural leader. Elizabeth, at 17, was helping her mother at the school and talking about maybe going east to get formal teaching training. James, at 10, was still young but already showing signs of having inherited the best qualities of both his parents. The ranch had grown to over 1,000 acres, one of the largest in the area. The school Rebecca had founded now had 2 teachers, with plans to expand again to accommodate the growing population of Julesburg. They had weathered economic downturns and personal losses, celebrated births and weddings and all the small triumphs that made up a life well lived. "What are you thinking?" Vincent asked, seeing the thoughtful expression on Rebecca's face. "I am thinking about how grateful I am," Rebecca said. "For that storm, for your kindness, for every single day we have had together. I am thinking about how different my life could have been if you had not been there that night, if you had ridden past instead of stopping to help." "I will never ride past someone who needs help," Vincent said. "You taught me that. You reminded me that one person really can make a difference, that choosing kindness and courage over fear and selfishness matters." Rebecca turned to face him fully, reaching up to cup his face with both hands. "I love you," she said. "I have loved you since that first night, and I will love you until my last breath and beyond." Vincent pulled her close, kissing her with the same tenderness and passion he had shown her on their wedding day. Their children made exaggerated sounds of disgust at their parents' public display of affection, but they were smiling, secure in the knowledge that they were loved and wanted. As the years continued to roll by, Rebecca and Vincent grew old together with grace and contentment. They remained active in the community, respected and beloved by their neighbors. They watched their children grow into fine adults, get married, and start families of their own. Thomas took over the ranch, running it with the same dedication his father had shown. Elizabeth did become a teacher, returning to Julesburg after 3 years of schooling in Denver to take over her mother's school. James, always the adventurous one, went west to California, where he started his own business. In 1910, on a crisp autumn day much like the day Vincent had proposed, they celebrated their 33rd wedding anniversary. They were both in their 50s now, their bodies bearing the marks of a life fully lived, but their love had only deepened with time. "You have any regrets?" Rebecca asked as they walked hand in hand through the golden aspens. Vincent considered the question seriously, as he considered everything. "I regret the years before I met you," he said finally. "All that time wasted, all that potential squandered. But from the moment you came running through that storm, everything has been exactly as it should be. You are my greatest adventure, Rebecca Irving, my greatest joy and my greatest blessing." "No regrets," Rebecca agreed, leaning against him. "Only gratitude." They lived well into their 70s, both of them active and engaged with life until near the very end. Vincent passed peacefully in his sleep in the winter of 1925. surrounded by his children and grandchildren. Rebecca followed him 2 years later, on a spring morning when the wildflowers were just beginning to bloom. They were buried side by side on a hill overlooking the ranch they had built together, with a simple stone marker that read, "Vincent and Rebecca Irving, partners in life and love, together forever." Below that, at the insistence of their children, was carved the line that had started it all. "You can stop running now." The ranch continued under Thomas's management and eventually passed to his children. The school that Rebecca had founded grew into a full academy that educated generations of Colorado children. The story of the woman who ran through a storm and the cowboy who caught her became local legend, told and retold around dinner tables and campfires, a reminder that courage and kindness can change everything. And on stormy nights in Julesburg, when the rain comes down hard and the thunder rolls across the plains, people sometimes say they can see two figures riding together through the darkness, a cowboy and his lady, forever chasing the same storm that brought them together all those years ago.